H2, self-sufficiency, right? It tells you that your quantity of beef must be at a satisfactory level, right? Check whether you have illustrated, okay, concepts of quantity in your sufficiency. Okay, so policies that you have seen in the extract is likely to affect the quantity available. You notice that there are two questions here, explain and discuss. So we can slice this up. Next, we want to find out what are the policies that could help to tackle market failure. So we need to bring in more than one, okay, but you cannot afford three. Okay, so keep it at two. Okay, because you still have a secondary objective at the back. Don't forget that. The first 2 marks goes to how market failure arises. You realize that in the earlier questions, they have been silent about how market failure arises. They only tell you negative externality is presented, okay, but they didn't tell you how this leads to market failure. As a rule of thumb, if the earlier questions have not addressed how market failure arises, you must still explain that. I would like to see your marginalist principle or your decision-making framework. I would like to see where consumers would like to consume at, MPB equals to MPC. If you have this specific sentence, you will get 1 mark. The next mark that I'm looking out for is overconsumption of meat. Okay, with the presence of the external costs, okay, this will lead to a divergence between your MSC, okay, and your MPC, and this will lead to overconsumption, okay, and your welfare loss to the society. Okay, so I'm looking out for this diagram. The next 4 marks goes to policy. Okay, 2 marks on tax and 2 marks on subsidy. Okay, the 2 policies has already been illustrated in extract 4. Okay, I do not accept any other policies that is not mentioned in extract 4. The next 2 marks goes to tax. You're supposed to illustrate how does a tax work. Okay, a tax on meat equivalent to the MEC drives up the production cost. Okay, and this will shift your MPC curve upwards. Okay, so long as you fulfill these 2 conditions, I will give you the 3rd mark. And the next mark for tax, okay, you need to illustrate that the producers incurring a higher cost of production will pass off higher costs to meat consumers. And this will force the consumers to internalize the external cost. For subsidy, it is actually easier. Okay, so the provision of the subsidy lowers the cost of production, okay, and reduces the price of healthy food in Japan. So 1 mark given to cost of production, okay, and reducing price of healthy food. Okay, and the next mark goes to substitutes. Okay, what's the relationship between the 2? Okay, and fall in demand for meat consumption. The next 6 marks it goes to talk about the discussion of self-sufficiency. Notice that the objective here, okay, is very driven at the quantity of the food available. Agreed? Okay, so long as you can illustrate, okay, from the perspective of healthy food, okay, or meat sufficiency, I will give you the credit. So notice how the question is framed. They ask you to discuss whether these policies are helpful. Okay, so it has to be helpful or harmful. Agreed? Okay, so the second part of the question is a TAT framework. 3 marks for thesis and antithesis, and 3 marks for synthesis. Okay, so your thesis 1, okay, providing subsidies for production of healthy food like fruits and vegetables will help in the reduction for demand for meat, okay, so that self-sufficiency in terms of meat can be met. Next, okay, I'm also looking out for, okay, what is the significance of having more healthy food producers? Okay, so the point that you're trying to illustrate here is you are going to promote more self-sufficiency in healthy food. Okay, increase in quantity for healthy food. Okay, and cut in consumption for unhealthy food. So you realize that subsidies actually achieve is actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Number 1, okay, it reduces it promotes self-reliance in meat because you curb demand for meat. And number two, it promotes self-reliance for healthy food because it encourages production for healthy food. However, a tax is something that we can't be sure. Okay, because if you realize that when you impose a tax, okay, this actually reduces the production of meat. Okay, and this reduces your self-sufficiency in terms of meat production. And the last 3 marks goes to synthesis here. So now synthesis, okay, is about how you're going to build a stand, okay, after illustrating your both side of the story. Okay, so you want to talk about the extent to which the policies help to address self-sufficiency. It depends on the extent of fall in demand and the extent of fall in supply. Okay, so you realize that the fall in demand, okay, comes from, okay, subsidies on healthy food. Okay, and this curbs the demand for meat. Okay, whereas the fall in supply, okay, is from the tax. Okay, so which effect will outweigh the other? Next, you may want to comment about the substitutability, okay, or the degree of relationship between healthy food and meat. So the assumption here is they are substitute, but whether they are weak or strong, okay, we don't know.